Welcome back. All right. So we're going to talk about the St. Louis Blues at the trade deadline, and there's not really much they need to do. The interesting thing is there's not much they have room to do either. Their deadline cap space, according to Cap Friendly, $175,000. So they've been up against the cap all year. They've had to play with less than a full roster at points during this season, which was especially difficult when COVID hit the roster and they weren't able to put a full team on the ice. They weren't able to call anybody up. It was a nightmare. Now, when you look at this team, the first thing that stands out is they have three goal-scoring lines. Three lines that can hurt you offensively, and a fourth line that is very competent. And there's still players on this side of the board over here who can plug in as need be. And I'm not even including Nathan Walker. I'm not even including some of the other players who can fill in. So the one thing with this lineup is it feels like there's three first lines. And it feels like that's by design. You have Saad with 17 goals. It's fantastic. O'Reilly, 12 goals and 35 points. And Perron with 12 goals and 29 points. Now, David Perron is an unrestricted free agent this summer. And the funny thing is that if St. Louis, obviously they keep him through the deadline, and if St. Louis lets him walk at the end of the year, I don't know how much that hurts them. Because, again, there's so much depth here. And there's more depth that could be coming up and paving the way for more success. Like a Logan Brown, who in 18 games had 3 goals and 3 assists for 6 points. Then the team gets healthier, he plays a more diminished role. And so Logan Brown next year could potentially end up being on one of the top 3 lines. Then you have Buchnevich, 19 goals, 27 assists. He's been a fantastic addition from the Rangers. Thomas, 7 goals, 34 assists. They probably want a couple more goals from Robert Thomas, but the 41 points are fantastic, and he's a really, really excellent passer. And then you've got Tarasenko, who has not rescinded his trade request. But at 19 goals and 27 assists, and considering the standing of the St. Louis Blues right now, I would say it's safe to assume he stays with the Blues at least until the draft, and maybe even beyond. Winning has a way of coating over some of the more contentious things that happen in the sporting world. So Barbashev is also sitting there with 17 goals, 24 assists, 41 points. Barbashev's been fantastic. Braden Shen, 16 goals, 15 assists, 31 points. And then you have Kyrou, 21 goals, 29 assists, 50 points. It doesn't matter what combination these guys are in. These lines are often changed up and switched up, sometimes in game. It doesn't matter. And again, this is a team that's pretty well cushioned when it comes to injury, other than the fact they don't have the cap space. But in the playoffs, that doesn't matter. In the playoffs, you can call up whoever. There is no salary cap during the playoffs. Your fourth line, you've got Dakota Joshua, 24 games for him, 2 goals, 3 assists. There's Tyler Bozak with 3 goals, 7 assists. And Oscar Sundqvist, 4 goals and 11 assists. And they're still a big team. This is still a team that can hurt you. Krug on the blue line has been good, 6 goals, 22 assists. Falk's been excellent, 7 goals, 20 assists for him. Mikkel has been a surprise in terms of how prominent he's been and how well he's played. 3 goals, 8 assists. He's a restricted free agent this summer. He's going to make some money. Parayko, 6 goals, 16 assists. I've been a huge Colton Parayko fan for years. Nothing has happened this year to change that. Jake Wallman, I'm a fan of his as well. He's a restricted free agent this summer in 27 games, 2 goals and 3 assists for Wallman. And Bortuzzo, 1 goal, 2 assists. He's not there for the offensive side of it. He's there for the toughness part of it, and he fills that role pretty well. But this is still a pretty big blue line. This is still a team that can hurt you physically, and they have a lot of skill. The biggest question mark really then becomes goaltending, right? And it's not a bad question either. Husso or Binnington? And at different points of the season, you could point to Binnington as the clear starter, and then Husso the clear starter. If the playoffs were starting tomorrow, Husso probably gets that first start, but he'd have a short leash. If they had a rough game 1, you go right to Binnington with full confidence for game 2. Husso has a record of 13-4-2, .931 save percentage. Binnington, 13-10-3, .904 save percentage. His save percentage has started going up again. So the curious thing to me is that when you look at the guys over here who are out and players who are just not on the roster, like Costin, who has 4 goals and 5 assists, he's a restricted free agent in the offseason as well. I mentioned Brown before. Scandella's on the IR, 1 goal, 9 assists. When he comes back, that solidifies your blue line. You have Perunovic on long-term injured reserve. He played 19 games with the Blues, 6 assists. He's a restricted free agent this summer as well. And then for goaltending, just for fun, you have Charlie Lindgren, who was 5-0 with a .958 save percentage. So it's possible he gets moved at the deadline for, I don't know, we saw 2 goalies get traded yesterday for future considerations. I could see that with Lindgren as well. But they have some fascinating choices at the deadline. In terms of upcoming prospects, they have Bolduc, who I think they're high on. Jake Neighbors, who they absolutely are. And I think Jake Neighbors will be on this roster full-time next year. And then Joel Hofer, who in a call-up looked okay, and Hofer may very well end up being one of the top 2 goalies soon, because Husso's a UFA. Binnington signed. Binnington's the guy. Do you give Husso Binnington-type money and end up spending a ton of money on your goaltending, or do you look at Husso after this season and based on what happens in the playoffs, maybe you make a move in goal, right? With the idea that Hofer's there, maybe you think Lindgren's going to be the backup next year. There are a lot of opportunities here for St. Louis once this season is done, whether they win or they lose, to make things better. So 2019, they win the Stanley Cup, and they were seen as an unlikely team to win the Stanley Cup right up until the playoffs started, but they had a fantastic second half of the season to get there. Now, 2019-2020, they finished 42-19-10. Then we had the pause. They had a rough time in the round robin that set up who was going to be seeds 1 through 4. They get the 4th seed. They play Vancouver. Vancouver knocked them out in that first round. Markstrom knocked them out in that first round. 2021, they finished 27-20-9. They got the Colorado Avalanche in the first round, and Colorado takes them out. Now, this year, their record is 32-15-6. Their record would tell you that they're right about the same, really, mostly, with the 2019-2020 team, which had an excellent regular season. It's been an excellent regular season this year as well. But Colorado is the same team this year as last year, if not better. And I think the question is still there. Can St. Louis knock off the Colorado Avalanche? And if the answer is no, then I don't know what changes they'd make. Because, again, this is such a balanced attack. This is so well done. And it is a very smartly put together team that, won the Stanley Cup in 2019, in part because they were put together very well. Binnington was red hot after he came in, and they just rode that momentum all the way through to the Stanley Cup final. They knocked out Boston in 7. And I guess the question I have looking at this team is, everything's really good. Like, really, everything's pretty good with St. Louis. You look at this roster and you don't find any major weaknesses with it. But is it a Stanley Cup winning team right now? If the playoffs start today, could they, roll through? Right now to be Minnesota, they'd play in the first round. Do they roll through Minnesota, and then do they have what it takes to knock out Colorado? And if not, are they able to, again, keeping in mind they don't have cap space, would they be able to make additions at the deadline via having to subtract somewhere else in order to get over the hump against Colorado? Again, I find no weakness in the forward group. Maybe you add a defenseman. Goaltending's been solid. And the depth is really, really quite good. So to me at the deadline, the one thing I could see them doing is maybe adding a defenseman, maybe adding a little bit of depth up front. But this is a pretty well put together team. And I'm going to be excited to see what happens in the playoffs. Just in general this year, I think the playoffs are going to be fantastic because there are so many teams with good records. There are so many teams with good records who will play other teams with pretty equally good records. And then only one of those 2 teams in each series can survive. And it's going to make for some absolutely fantastic hockey, I do believe. But let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. So if you're a Blues fan, do you see anything that you think this team needs, or are you confident with them going into the playoffs, or what do you think they need to pick up at the deadline? Because, again, I think they look pretty good. But I would be interested to know what you think. Because, again, when I was putting this together and I was putting up all the totals and all that, I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. It doesn't really matter who plays with who. That top 9, I think, is as solid and as deep as any top 9 in the league. So they're going to score their share of goals. And if Husso can take that 931, and if he can put up those kinds of numbers in the playoffs, they're going to win themselves some games. But let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, just happen upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.